last time I left off on the breast, and I'm going to pick up there again. This looks like a wonderful temperature. I still see feather barbs that weren't ended or pulled all the way through on some of these, so when I find one of the barbs that's just a little bit too wide, like right here, come alongside of it, and that'll become a split. Let's see if I can find another. There we go. Right here. You don't want to do a million splits either, but it's a good way to add them, and doing it before you decide you're just going to go in and randomly add splits. It's kind of like with the grain lines. I have to go in and I have to eliminate the grain line, and that requires adding splits. And I've gone in and added all these splits, and then I still have to go back in and take care of some areas that had grain lines. I might be needing to put too many splits into that area. So just like with that, when I'm going back and checking all of my work, I see that there's a barb that's a little bit too wide, and I'll go ahead and take care of that barb, and sometimes it turns into a split. And if I do all of this adjustment now, then I come back and I add any splits I may still need. Sometimes there aren't enough, sometimes it needs to be evened out. So you don't want to just go in and start adding splits. That's something to do at the end and only as needed. And right now, the splits that I'm adding are needed to split up my wood burning, because I wasn't as precise as I would like to be. So I'm fixing my deficit in precision by doing that. Oops, there we go. Just little tiny places that still need some breaking up, especially underneath the bill here. I'm not under the bill, but you these feathers that meet up with it. So I'm going to use the heel, and I'll come in from this side, and then I'm going to come in from the other side. And break things up a little more. It's a bit of a grain line here I'm working on. Couldn't really see it when looking at it from the other direction, so it's a good thing I turned this around and looked at it upside down. Okay, now this is one it's nice to be able to slide this because I need to get in, and I can even that foam grip can be in my way. So I'm trying to get everything I can out of my way. So this can be burned consistently. Just one little barb I want to take care of there. Looks pretty good. Of course, I'm sure I will find more when I come back on my third pass. Third and final pass. So I'm going to continue on with this breast, splitting up what I did on that first pass. Just a matter of refining things. Pulling my strokes all the way through to the end of the feather. Is something I catch myself not doing in that first pass. I'm sure because part of me knows I'm going to catch it in the second or third, but gotta be sure and catch it. See how I can end a feather by just kind of dragging along the back edge and guilty of pulling out of the view last few times I've been working. So, trying to be more diligent and checking as I go. I'm going to have to come back in with the spear and finish this up. Not only in this little crevice right here, but right straight underneath the breast. I can only get in so far without screwing things up, so I'll switch from the medium skew. Once I get this breast taken care of on the second pass. I mentioned before that harder Tupelo is heavier. It has more grain lines, and as you can see, I mean, this is like top grade Tupelo I got from Kurt's Waterfowl Corner. And when you're using some of the heavy stuff, and he has both, because there is a preference for some carvers. They want that harder Tupelo. But if you think about it, for me, this is my logic. There are fewer grain lines, and there, lot of space in the softwood in between. That makes the Tupelo lighter. It also makes it more buoyant. Usually a light piece of Tupelo carved into a decoy needs very little weight, and usually it's only for adjusting, say for a turn in the head and body. So if you use really good lightweight Tupelo, you'll have fewer grain lines to deal with and fewer issues with flotation. You should not have to hollow out a Tupelo, a good piece of Tupelo decoy, so that it floats at the water line. It should at least float above the water line. Otherwise, you got some pretty heavy Tupelo there. And that's one of the beauties of using Tupelo, is not having to hollow it out. Unless, of course, you're doing a self-righting decoy. And then, depending upon the pose you've chosen, sometimes they can self-right themselves if it's an extreme roll to one side or something like that. But you know, I have my Pacific Black Brant decoy, which is carved from a single piece of tupelo, and it's hollowed all the way up into the head, and then a little bit of weight was added to facilitate its self-righting, but I didn't need a keel. And a lot of people don't think that you can have a self-righting decoy without a keel. It's all in the engineering. Put a pretty full day in yesterday, made like 6 videos. Right now they're rendering or uploading to YouTube. It's kind of looking like it will take another 3 or 4 to finish this project after this one. And that's the other thing. I say, oh, well, I can do that in a week, 2 weeks, whatever. And when I say that, my first instinct, I have to double the time. For some reason, I think I'm Superwoman and I can do so much more than is possible. So, some people have a better understanding of the time it's going to take. But if you're like me, you'll think you can do it a lot faster. So, it's more important to plan ahead. A mature carver, an experienced carver who really wants to win, will recognize when they're not going to make the deadline of the competition and hold off to the next show or for the next year. Sometimes it is a year you have to wait when you don't meet your deadline. You don't want to show your hand in competition, so instead of bringing a bird that's inferior because you didn't put the time in, a mature carver will say, you know, it's only 365 more days till World next year, or to the Ohio show, or whatever show you're not making your deadline on. And life happens too, where, you know, you've given yourself all the time you needed, and then something you did not expect comes up. So, causing you to delay. Don't be disappointed. Things happen for a reason. Your peace will be much better if you're not under the pressure. I used to go to the shows with my bird just with base coats on, and I'd think that I was going to, do the bird justice, the carving justice in my hotel room. And while I might have won my category or division, sometimes even best in show, I knew I could have done better. I knew I could have spent more time. And there's kind of a disappointment in when you look at your piece and you actually kind of failed the piece, which means you're failing yourself. So really take a look at finishing completely. Don't cut yourself short by painting in your hotel room like I did for years. I didn't have a very peaceful carving life for many years. And now that I do, I can look back and say, boy, Laurie, you really could have done better here or there. Maybe you should have waited for another year on certain things. So now I plan everything accordingly, and when life gets in the way, I change my plans instead of compromising my art. Life's too short, and when family calls and needs help, or